Well, I thought I'd start this way with a special guest here on the podcast this week from Owen Sound alongside the legendary Frederick J. Wallace to Windsor and alongside the legendary Steve Bell. Manny Paiva, you sure know how to pick them when it comes to broadcast partners, don't you?
I don't know how special I am, but those other guys are very special. So I'm just riding their coattails as we continue on this journey of junior hockey.
It has been an interesting journey for you over many, many years now in the league. As we approach the holiday time, I don't know if you get reflective on what the game has brought you and your various hours in the broadcast booth, but how you feeling these days about all of it?
Geez, I absolutely love it still. In this, my 30th year of broadcasting hockey games in the OHL. Of course, we missed a year with COVID and that sort of thing, so it would have been 31. But somebody stopped me at the WFCU Center just this week and asked about when I first started, and I told them the story about how I was at Fanshawe College, and the Rogers there asked me to start calling games, and the stars on the nights at that time were Nick Stajdahar and Jason Allison. So if that doesn't date me, I don't know what does.
Good Kitchener boy, that Nick Stadjahar.
Yes, yes. World Junior, Canadian World Juniors at this time of year. I love the World Junior tournament, but the one thing that always stands out for me is this is not work. It's a labor of love. You, I know, are in the same boat. We love junior hockey and everything that it brings, and going to the rink every day is a joy.
It absolutely is. Very well said. And what a great journey it's been for you over 30 years and counting, of course, because this ride is far from over. Let's just be clear about that. Not only the holiday season, Manny, but kind of getting into the silly season in the Ontario Hockey League. And that's why I wanted to talk to you this week. The trade deadline, January the 10th, there's a little holiday window freeze. There's a freeze for players at the World Juniors as well, but we know handshake deals get done and then announced later. Nonetheless, the dealing has already begun, and let's start with the big one. Cam Allen to the London Knights for Noah Jenkin and count them, 7 draft picks back to the Storm.
Yeah, a huge deal for the London Knights. And, everybody makes the joke or the cliche, the rich get richer in the Western Conference. But really, in this case, London does look like a juggernaut now after making this deal. If there was one area where you thought the Knights would want to improve, it would be the back end. This deal was rumored to be out there. There was another defenseman who's at the World Juniors right now that was also rumored to possibly end up in London after the trade freeze is over. Heck, that may still happen. Who knows? But the London Knights wanted to improve their back end, and I think that loss in the Memorial Cup final to Saginaw left a bad taste in their mouth. Even though they won the OHL championship, they want to win the Memorial Cup, and I think the Knights are pulling out all the stops to ensure that that does happen. Larry Malott of Guelph was in Windsor on Thursday. And, we talked about everyone outside of London talks about why would anybody make a deal with London? And you send Cam Allen to London, and Larry, brought it up. He's like, I don't know why, but George Burnett has always been open to making a deal with London as long as it improves his hockey team. Noah Jenkin is a good young defenseman from Ilderton. They get 7 draft picks, and including 2 seconds in that deal. And so the rebuild is on in Guelph with that. And I really think Cam Allen really improves London, makes them the cream of the crop, not only in the Western Conference, but in the OHL. And what did Allen do in his first game? A goal and 2 assists.
Yeah, just doing Cam Allen things now that he's a London Knight, right? It's funny. And such a good point. London, we know. is the team that 19 other markets and 19 other fan bases love to hate. But this is not this is not a bad deal for the Guelph Storm. A 17-year-old player and 7 draft picks. I think George Burnett did pretty well here. It's not as though it was lopsided in favor of London. Yes, they get the great player, they get the immediate return, but I think this is a pretty good hockey trade.
Yeah, in the grand scheme of things, I think the Guelph brass thought they'd be a whole lot better this year. But when you're dead last in the Western Conference, you have to look to the future. George Burnett is a very bright hockey manager, and he knows the value of hockey players. And I think he pounced on this opportunity, knowing that London was shopping for defensemen, and he used Cam Allen as a very good chip to get a strong return and help maybe improve their rebuild that much quicker.
You said something earlier, Manny, that I want to explore just a wee bit further. The rich get richer, because I said the same thing. And I guess I made the mistake of saying it online on my X account. And people took it in a way that I did not intend it, I promise. So I just want to make the record clear here on that. Yes, we know that the London Knights are a very successful organization financially and otherwise. They're very successful on the ice. But I was not in any way, I promise you on my Christmas tree's life, that I was not trying to throw any shade or any innuendo. The reality is a London team that is coming off an OHL championship, that has 12 NHL drafted players on its roster, that has had a 19-game winning streak already this OHL season, is a very good team that just gets very gooder, if you'll forgive me for that, by the addition of a 13th NHL prospect, because Cam Allen is that with the Washington Capitals. So that's all I meant. And I wonder this, though, too, because in that same breath with the rich get richer, you talked about that bitter taste maybe in London's mouth. Yes, the OHL championship, but oh my gosh, not just losing the Memorial Cup, but doing so in such heartbreaking fashion. I'm not sure, Manny, I'm really not, that London is done with just the addition of Cam Allen. What do you think?
Yeah, I think they're still shopping, to be quite honest. And that's why I sort of alluded to the fact that there's a defenseman at the World Juniors who may end up still being in London, even though some people think this Allen deal means they won't make that other deal. But if you're trying to build a juggernaut, you're trying to win right now. And the window is wide open for London to dominate. Heck, you could argue that this team is as good as some American Hockey League teams right now. They are that talented. And I think if you want to make a statement, you go out and make possibly another move. It depends, of course, on the price, right? Mark Hunter and Rob Simpson, how much do they want to give up? They gave up a lot for Cam Allen, but if they really want to improve this team and ensure that they solidify themselves with not only a great chance at an OHL championship, but a Memorial Cup, they may make another move. I still think they're talking up there.
So let's go back to Guelph here. We agree that George Burnett got good value in this deal, but Cam Allen, the second piece that Burnett moves this past week, Vilmer Ulrichsen, another NHL prospect with Vancouver, is now in Brampton with the Steelheads. It appears to me, and there's been some talk, that Jet Luchenko may not get moved this year because he could come back, despite the fact he spent so many games with Philadelphia to start this season. He's only 18. He's almost likely to come back for another season. So some fans in Guelph were saying, and other pundits, no, you don't make the Luchenko move this year, you make it next year. I think the Ulrichsen and Allen deals signals that I am always hesitant to use fire sale, but I think Luchenko and maybe even others are likely to still be moved out of Guelph now.
Yeah, I think that's a good possibility, and with us knowing both of us knowing George Burnett, he's going to build in clauses that suggest a draft pick's going to improve if Luchenko does return next year and plays in the Ontario Hockey League. Yes, he stayed with the Flyers, but he stayed in Philadelphia for 4 games, right? And Philadelphia sent him back. Guelph is a great lesson on how that can turn. The tables can turn that way. Remember Poitras, who was with Boston. He's not in Boston this year. He's playing in the American Hockey League. What would that say if he stayed another year in the OHL last year? with the Guelph Storm. It's a good lesson that sometimes rapidly moving a junior hockey player to the NHL is not the right path. Not everyone is a Wyatt Johnston and could be a stud with the Dallas Stars. Sometimes they need a little bit more seasoning in the Ontario Hockey League. I think Jet Luchenko is being dangled out there. I think Jake Carabella, even though he's been hurt now for a third time, three different injuries, he probably drew some interest. I don't know what interest is out there for him right now. If you look at the Guelph roster, is it Charlie Paquette, another player that they may move in the not too distant future?
Great point on bringing up players maybe before they're ready. I've always said that you can sometimes see a guy get taken up too early before he maybe should have gone to the NHL. Never do you see, or rarely do you see, that an extra year in junior hurts the player. Let them come back, let them dominate, and then move on. One of the other sentiments, and you've explained very well how dominant, and I think fans of this league know, London, this is a juggernaut. But one of the sentiments I hear out there now that kind of frustrates me, Manny, from other fan bases is, well, what's the point now? Like, this is
Right.
London's conference, but you don't roll over for them. Somebody's got to step up and make it a competitive race to the Western Conference crown. Who might do that? Saginaw's still kind of in the mix on the outside of it, maybe. The team that you cover most closely, the Windsor Spitfires, is right there. The Rangers are running neck and neck with the London Knights right now, points wise. I mean, do we just? I haven't even mentioned the Erie Otters, who are, I think, at that time in their cycle of building to a championship potentially. What do you see? Who's not going to roll over for the London Knights?
Yeah, to be quite honest, and you said something earlier that I also want to touch on: the rich get richer. Uh, I didn't see the fodder that you got on X on social media on that, although I think you're a great follow on that social media platform. But when I say the rich get richer, it's more about what's on the ice.
Yeah,
This is a really good hockey team, and they just improved that much more immensely. Not talking about money or finances. If you want to send me some money, you can go right ahead, but that's not what I was talking about. As far as other teams in the Western Conference, I think you will see Windsor, for example, not make a huge splash, but tweak around the edges. And there's a rumor going out there about Connor Smith and being returned to Windsor. Um, Listen, I think it all starts with what the cost is. And Mike, you know as well as I do, back in the day, GMs held on to their second rounders so tightly, they rarely gave them up. The starting point for a deal right now, even for an overage rental for 3 months of hockey, is a player and two second round picks. That's just the starting point of the conversation. So, whatever that cost is, I think Windsor's going to be careful about that. This is still a really good hockey team that just beat London. Granted, they beat London without Cam Allen and without four players who were at the World Juniors. But I think the Windsor Spitfires believe that they have a good young team. They'll tweak around the edges, is what I think Bill Bowler, the general manager, is going to do and make a run next year. Save most of his assets to make a run next year. Because I believe management thinks, even though they haven't told me this, that they're a year ahead of schedule. I think even they're surprised by the fact that they've won 23 games and surpassed their win total for all of last year. So I believe they'll make some moves around the edges, but they won't do a huge splash like the addition of Shane Wright 2 years ago. And you know full well what happened after that deal in a historic first round exit for the Windsor Spitfires. I think Saginaw is very talented. I think they're going to try to make another run here with Perek and Misa on that lineup, and Joey Willis, who will represent Team USA at the World Juniors. I think they're going to add a few pieces here. So I don't think teams are going to roll over in the Western Conference. I do see a lot more activity happening in the Eastern Conference, which should be a lot more fun in the second half of the season.
before we get to that, because I agree, it's like a flat out arms race, I think, right now in the East, with so many teams jockeying still for that race to the Eastern Conference crown. But Bill Bowler's never been shy about being active at the trade deadline. And look at this team. from 10th place last year to where they are this year, it's been a very quick turnaround in the border city.
Yeah, without a doubt. They had a tremendous draft this past year. It always helps getting the first overall pick when you get a stud like Ethan Belchez. But the other rookies that they've added to their lineup, like a Carter Hicks and a JC Lemieux and an Ethan Garden, have been outstanding. So when you add that skill level, and then you add an impact player in the import draft, in Ilya Protas, who I think is a steal for a third round pick for the Washington Capitals. His hockey IQ and skill level is off the charts. So you add that talent to the roster, you're going to improve. Then you create a new whole system that you're playing with Greg Walters as your new head coach, and that's where the defensive improvements have been made. You bring in a new goalie coach who's working with Joey Costanzo. He now leads the OHL and wins with 20. And not only has he improved in his physical side of the game, but his mental part of the game as well. You combine all that together, and it's a fantastic recipe to see why Windsor has turned this around. Bill Bowler has always said, too, that he wants his team to make the playoffs each and every year. He didn't do that last year, but he's starting back on that road again.
Let's look at the Eastern Conference, Manny. We've both alluded to it. Oshawa already changing a coach and adding Colby Barlow. Brampton, before the season began, acquiring Carson Rakoff. They've since added Vilmer Ulrichsen, who we've already talked about. The Barrie Colts have already added Dallin Wakely to their roster. The Brantford Bulldogs make the deal to get Ryerson, Leanders, etc. So those are four teams that we know are certainly in the hunt. I think Kingston's had a pretty decent first half. I wonder what Corey Cooper does there, but how do you assess the Eastern Conference as we approach this deadline?
It's a fantastic mix of the five teams that you just mentioned, and I'm going to throw Niagara out there as well, and a sixth team, because I think they want to make some noise here, because I feel strongly that they believe they have a good enough team to make a lot of noise. I see a lot of those teams all making moves as the trade freeze comes to an end and tries to battle. I think Brampton's a little bit disappointed with where they are in the standings, so they're going to look to make some moves to shore up their back end in particular. I think they want to add some more defense out there, but I think Niagara's looking for the same thing. I think if you're a team with good young defensemen, the Eastern Conference teams are going to be calling your number a lot, and the price of poker will go very high if you want to play at the table.
Good ad with the Niagara Ice Dogs. Another team that we know a couple of things about. One is not shy about making moves, more deals made per capita than any other team in this league over the last number of seasons, but also coming from the basement where they've been these last number of years to where they are fighting for home ice in the first round in the second half of the season. I would agree. They definitely want to make some noise over there.
Yeah, and the one team that I look to that has some very good players, Sudbury. How much do they want to make? We all heard about the Quinton Musta story at the start of the year. Does Musty end up somewhere as part of the trade frenzy that we'll see in the Ontario Hockey League once the freeze ends? I think Sudbury is an interesting team to see what they do with some of the chips that they have.
Always a fun time of year. Always great to catch up with you. Manny, really appreciate you making time for us on the show. Thanks so much.
Hey, as always, Mike, I enjoy our conversations. Happy holidays to you and to everyone listening.
Manny Paiva, the color commentator with the Windsor Spitfires radio broadcasts and a 30-year man in this league, joining us for a closer look at the Western Conference as this trade deadline approaches. And of course, you got to look at the other side and wonder what they're doing in the East. If you wonder still what's going on in the East, let's check in there with our next guest who works in the Eastern Conference. It's going to be a very interesting couple of weeks in the Ontario Hockey League, so you can think about all of this as your Christmas holidays are relaxing and you wonder, what's my team going to do as the OHL trade deadline approaches? We'll also focus on every one of your teams. The wraparound is still to come. Stay with us on the OHL podcast. It is the most wonderful time of the year for getting in on all the hoops, football, and hockey action at DraftKings Sportsbook. In the season of giving, we're being gifted college football and basketball, pro football and basketball, and pro hockey too, almost 24/7. And here's a gift for all new customers. Bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins when you bet just $5. Happy holidays from DraftKings. The crown is yours. Well, this is going to be a lot of fun because Mike Poirier and I go way back in this league. I remember, Michael, when you were just a wee lad, a cub reporter, we might call you, with a radio station in Kitchener, coming in to cover those Rangers games. We'd be in the media room together when the media room was still in the bowels of the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium beneath the stands. It's a billet family room now. But anyway, that's where your Ontario Hockey League journey began. And look at you today with the Barrie Colts calling their games on Rogers TV. How did all of this come together for you?
Well, it's being at the right place at the right time. I think works out quite well. And yeah, it's crazy to think how far back that was. That was what, 2010? And I wasn't even married yet at that point. So that was a ways back.
Yeah, it certainly was. And now not only doing what you're doing in the league with the Barrie Colts, but we're kind of having a podcast crossover here, right? You've got From the Booth with Mike, your YouTube channel, joining us here on the OHL podcast YouTube channel. I got to tell you, I absolutely love what you're doing, bringing fans along with you, whatever you're doing, whatever rink that you're in. We're pretty lucky to get to do what we do, eh?
Well, the junior hockey circuit it's awesome to be able to cover. We're kind of spoiled with the quality of hockey we get now, and it's really fascinating too, just the whole dynamic of how the media landscape is shifting. Because here in Barrie, we don't have a radio broadcast team that travels with the team. We've lost our newspaper. The local TV station barely covers local sports. So I kind of saw that as a spot where there's a real hunger for junior hockey here in Central Ontario, and the whole YouTube scene it's been growing, and you see it in other professional sports. So I thought, hey, why not fill the void? And then when I started doing that, I started seeing that my old friend Mike Farwell is running the OHL podcast. So it's been kind of neat just seeing how your podcast has grown, and just seeing the conversations that you guys are having. And kind of my thought is it's kind of like we can like feed off one another. With you're in the Western Conference and I'm in the Eastern Conference covering the Barrie Colts.
Well, it's a lot of fun, and it makes sense to have this crossover as we head into what I like to call the silly season with that trade deadline approaching. Let's start with the team that you cover so closely, Mike. Look, Barrie has two things I'll say. One, Marty Williamson, we know, is not shy about making deals. He's usually pretty active. He's already made a swap with the North Bay Battalion to get Dallin Wakely to the Colts. It's a team that I thought was maybe under the radar when the season started because everybody was focused on Brampton and Oshawa. Do you think the Colts will still be active in this trading window?
Well, from what it sounds like, the Barrie Colts are probably going to look to add maybe some depth, because right now it seems like the left wing might be an area of focus for the Barrie Colts. They've got such great depth. Right now they're missing four guys at the World Juniors. You've got Bodwin Aki there for Team Canada, Hemming playing for Team Finland, and then Sam Hillebrand with Team USA. So those are big pieces out of the lineup. So right now, Marty Williamson being able to see what the team's capable of with the depth. And for the rest of the Eastern Conference, it's just so tight. We had the Niagara Ice Dogs here last night, and just seeing just how tight the Central Division is right now, I wouldn't be surprised to see the Barrie Colts maybe look to add someone up front, because the big question mark coming into the season was the backup. And Ben Horebic, he's really stood tall. He's been quite the surprise. He just earned his first career shutout this week. So the Barrie Colts, it's a 2-year window that they're seeing it. So I don't think they're going to make like a huge splash unless something comes their way. But still, it's fascinating just to see how this Eastern Conference is shaping up.
You mentioned Niagara. If we can, just a step further on them, because this is a different Niagara Ice Dogs team in the East this year. We're not exactly used to this of late, Mike.
No, it's quite surprising. I was actually talking with Steve Clark the other day on my channel just about where did this come from with Niagara? Because even for him, they were figuring maybe this team would challenge for a playoff spot this year, especially with the struggles they've had in recent history. But you have to give credit to players like Kevin He. He's fresh off that contract now with the Winnipeg Jets. He's great both on and off the ice. He's got an amazing shot, and it seems to be feeding off of him. And just the speed that team has, yeah, and a guy like Brady Wasslin, the rookie forward, and he's right in the mix. So the Ice Dogs, they're a fast bunch, and Owen Flores, what an outstanding OA season he's had so far. Very confident in the net, and I almost wonder if this team should maybe stand pat a little bit. I know there's been rumblings that maybe they'll add a bigger piece to maybe go on a run, but if this is a team looking to host the Memorial Cup in 2027, I like the foundation they have right now, and hopefully they don't disrupt it. Although Niagara in the past, didn't they set a record the other year with the amount of trades?
They certainly did. I believe that number landed on 27. Absolutely wild in one season. But yeah, great perspective. Flores in goal, some real nice pieces there with the youngsters. Robrick is fantastic. It's not even draft eligible yet. It's a good looking squad right now. And it's fun to see because you want to see teams kind of return from those doldrums, which Niagara has gone through the last number of years. Speaking of doldrums, and we know there are myriad reasons for it, Mike, but these Brampton Steelheads are not what anybody expected them to be. Maybe a titch of underperformance, but also just decimated by injury. And now, of course, they lose their very best players to the World Juniors for the next couple of weeks. But I don't know. If I'm James Richmond, I might be having a couple of restless nights right now.
Yeah, because if the playoffs started today, we would have Barrie Brampton in the first round of the playoffs, which nobody expected. We kind of thought that'd be a battle later in the playoffs. So yeah, with Brampton, it's quite surprising. Angus McDonnell, he's been out for quite some time now, and I do like the pickup of Ulrichsen from the Guelph Storm. It's kind of adding a little more depth because for the most part, they kind of seem like that one-line team with Rakoff, McDonnell, and Porter Martone. Although when you got a goaltender like Jack Ivankovic, this team's going to be able to turn it around. But they do. It seems like this team, they want to go all in. They still have some assets to use to acquire more players, and I'd expect them to probably be one of the busier teams come OHL trade deadline day.
I would agree with that. I don't think James Richmond is satisfied with what he has. This is definitely the year that Brampton, frankly, needs to go for it, especially the way they set themselves up coming into the season. Oshawa, I find really interesting, Mike. They go all the way and win the Eastern Conference last season. Everybody talking about it being maybe a year ahead of schedule. But when you get to the OHL final and you get swept, there's a little bit of that bitter taste in your mouth, isn't there? And so if they were a year ahead of schedule, that means they're supposed to be there this year. They make the coaching change, showing that they're not messing around. Everything, if it's not perfect, it's not good enough by the looks of things. Even though they've already added Colby Barlow, I don't know that Oshawa is in any way done either. Roger Hunt is probably going to be a pretty busy GM the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, because this is an Oshawa Generals team that has so many great pieces up front. That offense, it's lethal when you've got Cal Ritchie, Beckett Seneca, and Colby Barlow. And you kind of get a sense that this team, they're a determined bunch. They're hungry. They want to go back to that OHL final. It's just at times it takes a little bit for these guys to gel. Like we saw Colby Barlow went a handful of games there without finally earning a point after being acquired by the Owen Sound Attack. So I think for Oshawa, they've got the pieces, and with Ritchie being at the World Juniors, you're kind of seeing the effects of what he brings to this team. And even in the OHL final too, when Beckett Seneca, he was out due to injury. He didn't get to play against the London Knights. Just goes to show how important he is of a piece for this Generals team. And we're talking about the offense and the defense. And really, we're also missing Oster in net. He was the OHL goaltender of the year last year, and he's capable of stealing a round or two. So the Oshawa Generals a big threat. And it's going to be interesting to see how this all shapes out, because you would think that Brampton and Oshawa may be targeting similar players at the OHL trade deadline, and we'll see how that drives up the demand there.
Great point on Cal Ritchie, which is why it's the year for the Oshawa Generals. When he returned last year in November, that signaled the turnaround, if you will, and just had Oshawa rocketing up the standings. They had that tremendous winning streak to finish the regular season that continued into the playoffs, and we've already documented how it all turned out. What about, Mike, the Brantford Bulldogs? Are they going to just kind of sit on the fringes and watch this trade deadline? Matt Turek has proven himself to be very capable, makes really good deals. And I'm just trying to get my finger on the pulse of that. You're in the East. Maybe you have a better finger on it.
Well, with the Brantford Bulldogs, I like this group with Ryerson leaders in net. And then Igorov, he's shown that he can be a solid goaltender as well. So they've kind of built a team from the back end out. And they've had a lot of injuries this season. Merrick Van Acker has missed quite a bit of time. He's now back and contributing. They put up 10 goals the other night against the Kingston Frontenac. So it just goes to show this is a lethal offense. And if they can get a string of wins together, Nick Lardis, he's almost on a goal per game pace. He's been a lot of fun. So I really like the look of it. Their blue line, maybe they could add a little depth there. Maybe they look to a guy like Connor Smith out of Owen Sound. Maybe that could be a piece that they could add. But I do like the look of the Brantford Bulldogs. They just need to get healthy. That's been the big problem for them.
After 3 straight trips to the Eastern Conference Final, it appears as though North Bay recognizes the rebuild needs to be underway here. And Barry's already benefited, if you will, getting Dallin Wakely, but I don't think the battalion in any way are done moving veterans to get some draft picks and young players back.
No, and I think for fans in North Bay, they've been pretty spoiled these last 3 seasons going to the Eastern Conference Final. And in junior hockey, in the cycles, you don't typically see a team make 3 consecutive trips to the Eastern Conference Final. So they've done a great job there in North Bay. And, for Romani, he's been out due to injury with that broken clavicle. We'll have to wait and see when he comes back. But he's going to be a big piece coming up to the OHL trade deadline, along with Owen Van Steensel. Where do they end up? But I kind of like what North Bay has done so far this season. They just signed Ryder Cali, leading the Milton Menace in scoring in Tier 2. He's going to be a great piece going forward, the former first-round pick of the Sioux Greyhounds, and also adding Shamar Moses in that Dallin Wakely trade. He's been a point per game since arriving in North Bay. So I feel like this team is kind of building for the future, and I like the picks and the players they're putting together. I think North Bay, probably in like a couple years' time, they might be contending again for conference championships in the Eastern Conference. The management there has been spectacular, and I think they're doing everything right. And if they can make the playoffs, they can consider to win this year.
Excellent point. And I love the way that they're running that franchise up in North Bay right now. Probably under-recognized from us bums down here in southern and central Ontario, not paying enough attention to the gateway of the North up there. You made me think of something else, Mike. Let me get your perspective on this, because you mentioned the Romani injury. Quentin Musty also injured right now in Sudbury. And we remember the beginning of the season, right? The Musty holdout. He wants to be traded, eventually comes back to the team. These are 2 assets that I think still will be moved, but it makes it pretty tricky for Rob Papineau up in Sudbury and Adam Dennis and company in North Bay to make those moves, because you've got depreciated, let's say, assets, at least temporarily. But those are such high-end players. Interesting deals that are going to have to be made here.
And in junior hockey, those are pivotal trades for an organization going forward if you want to make that cycle to get back as a contender. And Sudbury, unfortunately, missed their chance last season. I felt like for Sudbury, they should have been, maybe 1 or 2 in the Central Division instead of falling to that 5 seed. But they need that organization. I feel like they need to make that move that's going to benefit this team going forward. And I feel like they're kind of underrated this year. We've already seen Sudbury 6 times against the Barrie Colts. I don't know who plans the schedules for the OHL, but it's been, I feel like Sudbury, they've got a lot of great pieces. Barney's been doing a great job behind the bench. And I feel like if they can get Musty and trade him for a good first-round pick, get those draft picks back, I feel like Sudbury could be on a similar trajectory to what we're seeing with North Bay. And it's fascinating when you've got the 2 Highway 17 rivals kind of at that same point. You feel like if they can both get in this same cycle, that rivalry should explode. And I believe that Musty will likely be moved. It's just a matter of what team is willing to take that chance with that injury.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. Good look ahead to that Highway 17 rivalry as both teams come back on the upswing in Sudbury and North Bay. Okay, before I let you go, how does the West look to you, Michael? Because I'll tell you what, over here, and it may be similar from where you're sitting in Barrie, but it's London, ho-hum, all London, all the time here in the West.
Well, I was a little surprised that they went and brought in Cam Allen. Obviously, he's a great talent with the Guelph Storm, the Washington Capitals prospect. Because I felt, the London Knights, they look solid from front to back. I know you see them more often than we do, but I think it's a good pickup. I'm just questioning, how are they going to manage all the minutes for the blue line with the London Knights when you've got Sam Dickinson, you got Oliver Bonk, Verstevich. So I'm curious about how they're going to handle that. Obviously, it's the Knights. They've got their systems, and it's been working these last few years. But the London Knights, they look like a juggernaut once again. And I'm just curious, what are the Kitchener Rangers going to do with having a strong first half of the regular season? I know for myself, I figured Kitchener would make the playoffs. I didn't think they were going to be sitting in the top half of the Western Conference standings at this point.
That makes two of us. And last year, a similar position for the Kitchener Rangers. And of course, you would know very well because Edward Chalet and Olivier Savard came from Barrie to Kitchener. I wonder, if it was up to me, I'd be preaching patience and standing pat. I'm not even sure that I'd be moving assets from the Rangers. Let's see what this group can do, because I don't think we give enough value to a deeper playoff run. Yeah, some guys, obviously, including Jackson Parsons, who's playing the best I've ever seen him play, and probably better than any other goalie in the league. He would be coveted by teams that have aspirations of championships, but why not leave him in Kitchener with everybody else and see what these players can do, and then put that money in the bank for the future, because we know this team also wants to build towards a 2027 championship, like you talked about with Niagara earlier. If you give these guys, who is still going to be here in 2027, a deeper playoff run this year, I don't think you should underestimate the value in that.
Yeah, and that's just it. It's at 2027. That's what's lingering for some of these teams, because you've got the cycle. And for teams that are overachieving right now, even look at the Kingston Frontenacs, another team that no one was really expecting much of in the Eastern Conference. So you have Kingston, Niagara, and Kitchener. I feel like those are kind of teams that maybe you stand pat, maybe tweak the lineup a little bit, bring in some depth, but it's going to be fascinating. But another team I'm surprised by, the Erie Otters. I know Erliden suffered an injury, so what are they going to do at the back end? Are they a team that looks to Quentin Musty? The Erie Otters were my preseason pick as representing the Western Conference. So I'm just curious as to what may happen down there in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, excellent question there. And I don't think the Otters are exactly where they wanted to be or expected to be at this point. So I anticipate Dave Brown will be looking to make a move as this deadline approaches as well. What's your take, Mike? And this is a team that's dealt with Barrie an awful lot in the past, because the GM in Saginaw, of course, has a history with the Barrie Colts. I'm talking about Dave Drinkle. And some are still saying that this team wants to run it back and go for another championship in Saginaw. They've got Michael Misa, they've got Zane Parekh, and those two pieces alone make them pretty formidable. But I don't know. And you look at how strong London is. But what's your sense of what the defending Memorial Cup champions may do as this deadline approaches?
Well, the Saginaw Spirit, they've been a Jekyll and Hyde team. They're the highest scoring team in the OHL at points. They also have the most penalty minutes, and they do great. It's feast or famine on some of the teams below them in the standings. But when they go up against London, the Windsors, they kind of have struggled recently. So they don't have a lot of draft picks to use to maybe add some pieces. So do they stand pat and hope for the best? I almost wonder if they need to do a bit of a soft sell, bring in some draft picks, some young talent. I don't know if they would entertain the idea of trading a Michael Misa type, because that'd be almost earth-shattering in the OHL. It'd be kind of similar to when John Tavares was traded from Oshawa to London. It would be that kind of magnitude. So I'm very curious as what direction the Saginaw Spirit take, because they could, in fact, if they decide to move some of these talented players, they could recoup, and we could be talking about them being back in the contenders chair in a couple of years' time, like North Bay.
It's always a fun time of season. It's always a fun league to be working in, and it's the most fun when we can catch up with one another like this. Our markets are 90 minutes apart, Mike, and we only get to make one trip either way. Some way, somehow, we've got to rebalance the schedule and see more of each other in arenas, don't we?
Well, if the rumors are true with expansion on the horizon, who knows? Maybe they'll put Barrie and Kitchener in the same division at some point.
I would not complain about the chance to see more of you, but I certainly appreciate your time as we do the podcast crossover here today. From the booth with Mike Poirier joining us, and here on our OHL podcast channel. Listen for Mike on Barrie Colts broadcasts. Check out his YouTube channel. And hey, a very Merry Christmas to you and yours, my friend. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Well, Merry Christmas, and we'll save you a spot when you come up to Barrie in a couple weeks' time.
Can't wait to get there. Mike Poirier calls games for the Barrie Colts on Rogers TV up in Barrie, and got to know him when he was reporting for a small radio station in Kitchener and wanted to get involved in hockey, so came to every game to report for that station, eventually has made his way into Central Ontario and continues to stick around the league. Great kid. Don't forget to check out From the Booth with Mike, another YouTube channel that gives you OHL information and access. Okay, we still have OHL information for you as well, naturally. The Wraparound is coming up, where we take a look at every team in the league, maybe throw those teams a little Christmas present as the holidays approach. Plus, as promised, the 3 best logos in the Ontario Hockey League are, and prospects of the week. Still to come on this episode of the OHL podcast. The sights, the sounds, the smells, the action. It's what keeps us going back to the game. And before you go to the game, go to Game Time. With their new feature, Game Time Picks, it's easier than ever to get tickets to see your favorite team play. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Whether it's a sporting event, a concert, or even a monster truck show, Game Time is all you need. Take advantage of seat views to get a panoramic view from your seat before you buy. All-in pricing, so there are no surprise fees at checkout, and the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time, will credit you up to 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code THPN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code THPN for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Just before we get to your wraparound for this week, Elliot Friedman on Hockey Night in Canada this past weekend reporting that USA Hockey is blocking or not giving its approval, its blessing to the expansion of the OHL. In other words, no Muskegon, no Youngstown to the Ontario Hockey League. USA Hockey has indicated in writing it will not allow for this franchise transfer. Look, I'm not going to sit here and claim to know exactly what goes into all of this behind the scenes. USA Hockey also obviously has interests to protect when it comes to the U.S. national team development program. Obviously, the USHL, it doesn't want to see teams leave the fold, but I think a couple of things here. One is, if the teams wish to, can they just dissolve as franchises in the USHL and then resume operations as franchises in the Ontario Hockey League? I also have to think there is some negotiating at work here, because if you write a big enough check, I think a lot of problems go away. And so maybe this is just a bit of a power play on the part of USA Hockey to increase their own leverage in these negotiations. Again, I'm not going to claim to understand what goes on behind the scenes, but there are powers that be on both sides in the Ontario Hockey League and within USA Hockey that are working at this to see what happens. We know the OHL wants to add those 2 teams, Youngstown and Muskegon, possibly as early as next year. The OHL's Board of Governors has approved that, but at least right now, USA Hockey is saying, hang on, pump your brakes there, OHL. We're not behind this idea at all. So maybe a little bit of a speed bump here as we move towards a possibly expanded OHL beyond those 20 teams, but I don't think that this is in any way a deal breaker as of yet. We shall see. Something that we do every week here on the OHL podcast is a little something we call the Wraparound. And I thought this week it would be fun to do it with a Christmas theme. So a couple of things are different. The Christmas theme means every team this week on the wraparound is getting a Christmas gift given to them. And the other thing that's happening with the wraparound this week, our buddy who edits this podcast for us, his last name starts with a W. And so he was one of those kids in school all his life. When you're going through things alphabetically, when does his name come up? Right near the end. He said, why don't you reverse the order? I said, I'm going to do you one better. This is going to be like digging into your stocking. You don't know what's coming out. We're going to go in completely random order for the wraparound this week, just to satisfy the editor, who's a really good guy and does really good work, and to make it like a Christmas stocking. When you reach in, you don't know what you're going to pull out. So our wraparound, looking around the entire Ontario Hockey League in random order this week, with each team getting a gift. And let us begin in Sarnia, where we're gifting a new general manager. How do you like that? I kid, but Dylan Sika's name came up when we were in Sarnia just this past week. And there, I was asked, are you guys saying nice things about our GM on your podcast? Listen, I just threw that in for fun, to poke a little bit back. Love those conversations that happen in the rinks when we're there. And I've got no qualms from the outside looking in at what Sika's been able to do in Sarnia. I think getting Beckham Edwards to the Sting and a nice, strong core of players is huge for the team. It's obviously in the midst of a rebuild, but things are starting to turn around after some injuries to key players, all those road games, etc. So Sarnia is starting back on the right trend upward. I expect that to continue. But if I am giving a gift to the Sting this holiday season, it is an extension cord so they can plug in that power play. The Sting have had more power play opportunities than any other team in the league with 154, but they have managed just 16 power play goals, and they sit last in the OHL with a success rate of only 10.4%. So the Sting get an extension cord for Christmas. How about the Brampton Steelheads? Well, for Brampton, we're gifting them a copy, a DVD copy, that is, of the movie Rocky II. You remember the movie when Adrian comes out of her coma and she says to Rocky, just want you to do one thing for me. Just one thing. Win. And that's what fans in Brampton are asking the Steelheads for. Just win. 7 losses in a row headed into the break. And also at this time of year, we always talk about a healthy and prosperous new year. Well, for Brampton, we certainly hope that good health, because they have been decimated by injury this season. In Niagara, we are gifting the Ice Dogs a home ice start in the playoffs. Early season darlings in the CHL top 10 were the Ice Dogs before November came along. Not the best month for the Dogs. They allowed 60 goals over the 12 games they played in the month of November. They fall out of the top 10 rankings, but so far it's been a December to remember, with 7 wins in a row, points in 8 straight, the hottest team in the league headed into Christmas. And let's hope for the Dogs' sake they can hold on to a top 4 position in the Eastern Conference and open the playoffs on home ice. Next up, London. And to London, we gift a Memorial Cup. I know fans in 19 markets are super frustrated by that gift, and every team would like a Memorial Cup, right? But you're supposed to get what you want for Christmas. So London gets a Memorial Cup because they really want that Memorial Cup. They win the OHL championship last year, but there's a sense of some unfinished business with an already strong team that's gotten stronger with the recent addition of Cam Allen. And I don't think London is done dealing yet. So to London, we gift that Memorial Cup that they so covet. In Guelph, the gift is a kitchen renovation. That renovation so they can build bigger cupboards for all the draft picks they are about to haul in. 3 picks coming back in the Vilmer Ulrichsen deal with Brampton, and 7 more in the Cam Allen deal with London. And I don't think the Storm are finished swinging deals just yet. So to Guelph, we gift that kitchen renovation, and along with it, some bigger cupboards for all those draft picks. How about to Ottawa and a fountain of youth for Christmas? The 67s are still rolling with 4 overagers, Matthew Mayich, Will Gerwa, Brady Stonehouse, and Colin McKenzie, the goaltender. They had to sit out Stonehouse, who is an NHL signed prospect, in their final game before Christmas in Kitchener. That is not the situation anybody wants to be in. So let's get younger in Ottawa, figure out that overage situation, as the overage trade deadline is one day before the league's deadline. January the 9th for overagers, January the 10th, of course, for the rest of the league. In Sudbury, we are gifting the Wolves a trading partner with a good team doctor. You see, dealing Quentin Musty is going to be more difficult due to his injury. It's highly likely that Musty still gets dealt. You remember the drama at the beginning of the season, Musty holding out, the Wolves playing some hardball, Musty coming back. Now he's injured. I still suspect the deal will be made. Let's just hope they can find a good deal with a team who's willing to take on an injured player. To Saginaw next, and we gift a good night's sleep to general manager Dave Drinkle. There's been enough chatter already this season about going for another one, running it back and challenging for another Memorial Cup. Of course, the Spirit, the defending champs. And when you've got players like Michael Misa and Zane Perek on your roster, how do you not consider running it back? Don't forget that the Spirit also have San Jose Sharks prospect Igor Chernyshov, who's yet to play. He's scheduled to play his first game in the OHL in early January. So what do you do if you're Dave Drinkle? You're kind of running mid-pack in the Western Conference. You know how good London is. You know how good some other teams are. Windsor, a divisional opponent. The Rangers are no slouch. Do you run it back, or do you swallow hard and start moving assets and maybe try to accelerate a rebuild? Big decision ahead. So we wish a good night's sleep to Spirit general manager Dave Drinkle. How about to the Barrie Colts? We gift them this holiday season a suit of armor. The Colts entered the CHL top 10 for just the first time this season in the week leading up to Christmas, and deservedly so. They've got points in 15 of their past 20 games since the beginning of November. They have steadily climbed the Eastern Conference standings, and they have allowed the fewest goals in the East by far. The thing is, Barry, you're not sneaking up on anybody anymore. So have fun with that proverbial target on your back. To Owen Sound, and we gift the Attack 21 wins in their final 35 games. Does it sound like too much for the last place Attack? Here's the thing. Owen Sound had a real impressive streak of 12 consecutive seasons with at least 30 wins, but that was snapped last year when the Attack finished with just 29. Now, only 9 wins so far this season, and it looks like it will be back-to-back seasons with fewer than 30 wins up there in the Bears' den, unless they can win 21 of their final 35. In Peterborough, we gift a spa day for goaltender Easton Rye. He has started 6 of the past 8 games for the Petes. He has won 5, while posting a goals against average of 3 and a save percentage of .918. Peterborough has points in 6 of its past 8 games, really starting to turn things around. Easton Rye has been a big part of that. So give the kid a spa day. Let him relax and then put him back in the net for more in the second half. In Kitchener, we gift, I think, the team and the fans some patience. Consider where the Kitchener Rangers are at Christmas, virtually an identical place as they were a season ago. And what happened a season ago? It was a season that started, people thought, you know what? It's going to be a team that's hard-pressed to make the playoffs. Maybe it's time to start rebuilding. And all of a sudden, they're sitting near the top of the league at Christmas time, in fact, in first place. And general manager Mike McKenzie said, listen, I've got to do my part for this team that has shown on the ice what it's capable of. So he went out and added Edward Chalet, Olivia Savard to try to make some noise. The second half, not what the Rangers wanted. They got bounced in the second round of the playoffs versus their divisional and, dare I say, arch rival opponents from London. And now the Rangers, again, a season that started with young team, time to rebuild. They move Rakoff before the season even begins, and here they are sitting tied for second points-wise in the Ontario Hockey League with one of the youngest teams in the league. So what do you do? I think you try to find some patience. Maybe this is one of those years where doing nothing is actually doing something, and the Rangers just stand pat with what they've got headed into the second half. We shall see. Off to Brantford, where we gift the Bulldogs a bucket, a mop, and some elbow grease. Of course, because the Brantford Civic Center is going to play host to the CHL's Top Prospects game on January the 15th. And you know the city and the team want the eyes of the Canadian Junior Hockey Leagues to see the very best of the Bulldogs' hometown and home rink. I have no doubt that will be the case. Just let's give them what they need to make sure they show their very best on January the 15th. Off to Sault Ste. Marie, where we gift the Greyhounds a chance to say goodbye to Gibby. It's kind of hard to imagine that defenseman Andrew Gibson will remain a Greyhound beyond this year's trade deadline. And more success, too, will gift for Hunter Sullivan, who scored his first OHL goal in his final game before the Christmas break. Those are the gifts given to the Sioux Greyhounds. In Erie, we will give the gift of lost luggage for Carey Terrance. You see, he made Team USA, which, as a Canadian, I can't have good things happen for Team USA, right? At the World Junior Hockey Championships. It's all Canada all the time. But in all sincerity, this is huge for Carey Terrance because he gets to play for Team USA in, of all places, Cornwall, Ontario, which is just across the border from his home community in the Akwesasne territory. Huge for Terrance. And of course, even though I'm cheering for Team Canada, love to see the players that get to represent their country from across this league, and Terrance will play for USA. In North Bay, we give the gift of long memories for fans. The rebuild is definitely on for the battalion. They will be, I think anyway, one of the more active participants in this trading season. So it's going to be a bit of a grind up there in the gateway to the north to earn a playoff position this year. But fans in North Bay have been treated to 3 straight trips to the Eastern Conference Final. So let's hope those memories linger for a little longer up there in North Bay. In Kingston, we offer the gift of fans to find the team. The Fronts have been a pleasant surprise so far this season. They're sitting second in their division, 4th in their conference, but what good are home playoff dates if the fans don't show up? Kingston has got a beautiful junior hockey arena, great location, and they've got a winning team. They also just hosted a World Junior tune-up game. Attendance, though, at Slush Puppy Place ranks in the bottom half of the league. It's a great barn with a good team. I hope fans find them as we head into this second half. In Windsor, we offer the Spitfires a couple of cases of energy drinks for goaltender Joey Costanzo, who has started 9 of the Spits' past 10 games. He has won 7 of those 9 games, though, and Costanzo has been terrific all season for the Spits. He leads the league in wins, and his 2.37 goals against average and .915 save percentage is well above his career average of 3.78 and .885. Costanzo having himself a career year. Give the guy some Red Bull. In Oshawa, we offer the gift of stability behind the bench. Brad Malone replaced Steve O'Rourke as head coach this season, even though the Gens were in first place at the time. Now, Malone becomes Oshawa's 5th head coach in the past 4 seasons, as the team has gone from Greg Walters back in 2020, 2021, to Todd Miller, to Derek Laxdal, to O'Rourke, and now to Brad Malone. Let's hope Oshawa finds some much-needed stability behind the bench. And finally, to Flint, where we gift the Firebirds some goals. The Firebirds are among the older and more experienced teams in the league this year, but they're just not getting the production you would expect from that roster. Only 5 teams have scored fewer goals than the Firebirds this season, and their special teams are also struggling. They've got the 19th ranked power play, and they are 18th in the penalty kill through the first half. Now, they have won 4 straight going into the Christmas break, which makes them the 2nd hottest team in the league, behind only Niagara, We identified that earlier. Points in 8 straight and 7 straight wins for the Ice Dogs. So let's hope the break does not cool off the Flint Firebirds. And there is your wrap around, or more like an unwrapping of some Christmas gifts for each OHL team as we run around the league like we do every week here on the OHL podcast. Our final episode of 2024, which means our final prospect of the week for this year, halfway through the season. We'll get to that prospect of the week in just a moment. But it was asked earlier via email to ohlpodcast@rogers.com. We love hearing from you via email, love hearing your thoughts, love getting your feedback. And in this particular case, it was a suggestion. Hey guys, in your opinion, what are the 3 best logos in the Ontario Hockey League? Now, remember, this is distinct from uniforms. We're just looking at logos in this case, but you ask, we'll answer. Here you go. I'll say one thing as a caveat off the top. The team that I cover, and therefore might be a little biased about, gets eliminated from this. And I will also add to that, I'm kind of a fan of the classics, the more traditional or simple approaches to logos. So maybe keep that in mind as I get into these top 3. But I'm taking the Kitchener Rangers classic, left to right script Rangers across the chest, which I think looks beautiful, out of the equation. So they don't count. Only from the remaining 19 teams will I choose here. And the other thing is I'm giving an honorable mention because it was tough. But gosh, I really like that Brantford Bulldogs logo. Maybe it's because I'm a dog person, definitely not a cat person. And that dog, that bulldog, chomping that bone looks kind of cool. But that's getting my honorable mention. Now, to the top 3 logos in the league. Starting at number 3, we'll go in descending order. And this may fly in the face of the traditional classic kind of looks that I like. But the Saginaw Spirit get my nod as the 3rd best logo in the Ontario Hockey League. There's something very patriotic about it, right? And the Spirit are one of 3 teams that are U.S. based in the Ontario Hockey League. Maybe I'm also going back to the Stephen Colbert days. If you remember those days when he took on the Saginaw Spirit as a bit of a cause, he became a fan on his late night talk show. But I love the eagle on there, the stars and stripes. Like I said, it's very patriotic. I dig it. And the Saginaw Spirit gets my nod as the 3rd best logo in the Ontario Hockey League. In at number 2, how can you not love the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds? Honestly. Now, I will say I like the red with the white logo better than the white with the red, but honestly, you look at that Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds logo with that red greyhound in that circle in the middle of the sweater. It's beautiful. It's crisp. It's clean. It's simple. It's Greyhounds. And on that note, kudos to the organization for switching up the inflatable that the team skates out onto the ice beneath, because back in the day, and I wish I could have found the picture, but if you've known it from years past, it looked a little more like a rat than a greyhound, in my personal opinion. They've got that fixed up, but this is all about the logo. And the 2nd best logo in the Ontario Hockey League, in my opinion, is the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds. And in at number 1, I said a moment ago that this is about logos, not uniforms, but for me, it's actually the same. And this is as a guy that grew up in Kitchener as a Rangers fan, but there was something always special when the maroon and white came to town. I don't know what it was, but they have captivated me since childhood. I love the unis best, and that Peterborough Pete's logo. Simple, script, put a hockey stick in there as the T. It's a beautiful thing. And for me, the Pete's are the number 1 logo in the Ontario Hockey League. I mean, that's just my opinion. It's pretty subjective, isn't it? Pete's, Greyhounds, Spirit, 1, 2, and 3, with an honorable mention to the Brantford Bulldogs, or the Bulldogs franchise, because it was the same in Hamilton. Either way, those are my favorites. If you want to share yours or criticize mine, you can do it anytime. OHL podcast at rogers.com. That is the email address, or find me on X at Farwell_OHL. Maybe you want to criticize my pick for prospect of the week this week. You can do that too, or share your own prospect of the week. But for me this week, I look to the Western Conference's border city of Windsor, where we find Jack Nesbitt. He's got points in 5 of his past 6 games, 2 goals, 5 assists for 7 points in those past 6 games, and a +4 rating to boot. Jack Nesbitt of the first place West Division, and tied with 49 points with the Kitchener Rangers heading into Christmas. Jack Nesbitt of the Windsor Spitfires is my prospect of the week, draft eligible next June when the NHL calls out the names of its newest members. So that is your prospect of the week for this final episode for 2024. And on that note, we here at the OHL podcast wish you a very happy, restful, healthy holiday season. Enjoy the World Juniors, because we know you'll be watching. Enjoy a bit of a break. We're back at it on December the 28th with the Ontario Hockey League resuming play. We will be back with a new episode of the OHL podcast just before the trade deadline on January the 7th. So we're going to take a little bit of a break, catch up with our family, reacquaint ourselves a little bit, and then back with a new episode. So a couple of weeks off, and we'll be back on January the 7th. Have the very best of the holidays to you and yours from us here at the OHL podcast.